Iburu, Iboya, Ibucheche, everybody in Cyberland. It's your favorite Babalao. At least I hope so. Omo Oshun Dileke. Coming at you. We try to play a little bit of catch up with all these videos for the help me help you. And for today, I got a good one. I got one that's called Olbe D. Olbe Odi. And it's Omo Oshun. And for this one in particular, it strikes me as a beautiful pair, because in Ochun, this is where we have to pay attention to Ochun. Olbedi speaks a lot about that, so Ochun has a huge role in this sign of Olbedi. So for everybody out there that is Obedi, lesson number 1 is pay attention to Ochun. All right. Lesson number 2. Olbedi is one that has a lot of issues with intimacy. Has a lot of issues with sometimes maybe holding down a relationship. Maybe Obedi has a hard time staying faithful. And rightfully so sometimes, where they're going to have those conversations, those deeper meanings in life, okay? Because in Olbedi, this is where the private parts of the man and the private parts of the woman went to war. And there's a pataki that talks a lot about that. But it also talks about that because they went to war, they're at the end of the war, this is where everybody kind of kiss and make up, right? So Olbedi also talks about the art of lovemaking, the art of having sex. And in Olbedi, the problem with it is that we forget that in Olbedi, if we're not careful and we start to shift to the Osolbo side, Olbedi Osolbos typically can manifest to something a lot bigger, right? For multiple reasons. So before I get into those multiple reasons, I want you to understand what lesson number 2 is. It's relationships, significant relationships, maybe a girlfriend, a wife, maybe you haven't found the right person. Maybe you're with somebody, and at the end of the day, we have to make sure that you hold that person down, right? You have to learn how to treat them right. You got to learn how to speak to them. You got to remember that sex is not everything. We can't obsess over people, right? Especially physical attraction. We have to be able to do a lot more to maintain a relationship instead of just thinking with the wrong parts. Now, that issue right there can sometimes relate to men and women. Mainly, I see that in men. For women, particularly, when this sign comes out, we have women that have either are pregnant, been pregnant, want to be pregnant. So there's a lot of life that needs to be born in this sign, right? And we need to always remember that in this faith, Olbedi is typically for women is consulted in the manner of getting pregnant. A lot of Olbedi's kids go in front of a babalao to get pregnant, right? What we also got to remember is how do we get there, right? Again, we tie back into the love making and how do we maintain a partner and making sure that we do that the right way. So a lot of things circle Olbedi, right? A lot of things circle Olbedi. Ochun, number 1, right? Intimacy, number 2, making sure we take care of our partner. Pregnancy, okay, the need to want to be pregnant, the need to want to create life, the need to have an heir to what we have, right? Maybe it's the need to want to have godchildren, but at the end of the day, Olbedi has those urges, right? And we talk about the battle of the 2 private parts and the lovemaking and whatnot. Okay, now let's talk a little further about Olbedi when we talk about Ori. So in Olbedi, this is where Ori comes to be. This is where Olbedi, Ori, is now sitting and in charge of people's heads. But what a lot of people don't know is that there's a pataki that talks about Ori. And it talks about that behind Ori was Ilenini, which is a lot of that Osolbu we talk about all the time. All the bad and the negativity. So what does that tell you? Everything is amplified, like I told you before. So when I tell you that you have to attend Ochun, because that's important, because she's in the sign. And remember, I'm doing this video for an Omo Oshun, so it's even more important for you to be in sync with Ochun, because when you're not, Ifa, your life destiny, all right, that is a universal sign. Okay, that's not a sign that we're just talking about, an earthbound sign. We're talking about a universal sign. Things will magnify, and there's a pataki that talks about how bad things can magnify. They talk about a village that had annual sacrifices that they did to Ochun at the river, and they missed 1 year, and immediately that river overflooded, right? Wiped down the town, but wiped down the city as well. So that gives you a reality check that we have to maintain everything in order, because the Osolbu, because when Ori came down, right? Ilinini was right behind them, ready to sabotage everything. And what is your Ori? Your Ori is supposed to dictate and guide you. So it's very important that we remember that. That also in this sign speaks Ori. So we have to get into the habit of making sure that we do rogaciones. But we also have to make it a habit to ensure that we're giving the right ebos when dictated, because there's another sign where Ori was getting all the ebos, but the body wasn't. And although the head is going to take the body still needs attention. So those are another life lessons learned in Olbedi. So in essence, a couple of other things that I really, really want to make sure that we talk about is going to be Ogun. Okay, Ogun in this sign speaks heavy. Why? Because in this sign you have pretty much all of the major divinities, the terrestrial divinities, the earthbound elements divinities, right? We talk about Chango, we talk about Lewa, Batala, Ogun, Ochun, Orumila. You talk a lot about a lot of those divinities. But particularly, a lot of people forget who Ogun was, and Ogun being one of the first divinities that came down, or Bedi coming down as the Ori for their head. Obviously, in order to guide mankind, you need to have an Ori present, right? Because that's how we walk, that's how we understand the difference between right and wrong. And there's a lot of different things about Ori that are very mysterious. Ori himself is a divinity that is received by Baalaos in order to center themselves, in order to open up and awake the third eye, because sometimes guys have a harder time than women. Women naturally have those abilities. But when we talk about Ori, and we talk about Ilinini, and we talk about Ogun being the first divinity clearing the way, right? Now Ogun clears the way, all of a sudden the paths are lit up, Elegua is present, showing people where to go. Then we talk about Ochun and the water, and then we talk about a lot of what Orumila has to do, and that's the destiny. That's Ori. Because in the Patakis, Ori had to do a bow himself. Ori had to do a bow. So again, what are a few lessons learned when we talk about Olbedi? Now we know we have to honor Ogun and Ochun. We look to Ogun and Ochun to solve all our problems in Olbedi. But we also know that Chango comes out victorious for a lot of our enemies that want to do us harm. We also know that we do an ebo with 8 coconuts. All right, and that specific ebo, Olbedi, I'm giving you a secret here. Go see a babalao that can do the ebo with the 8 coconuts. Okay, and they don't know what it is. Tell them it's the ebo for Olbedi, because you have an awofaka or an ikofa and Olbedi, and they will be able to assist you. Additionally, we want to make sure that we stay away from things that can affect our heads, because in Olbedi, because of the Ori, we want to be careful that we don't take too much energy drinks, caffeine, coffee, Drink a little bit more organic, right? Maybe non-caffeinated drinks, right? Maybe some nice herbal tea. Olbedi needs to be careful. Alcohol can affect you. A lot of those different things. Olbedi, when you start to think that you got things right in your love life, and you stood away from the osolbos, right? And you started to treat a person right, and things are going just fine, Ilenini is going to come right back and ruin the party. Let me tell you why. Because an Ilenini, right, wants to create those obstacles, those negativities around you. So here's where he attacks others to attack you. So here's where you got to be very careful about the in-laws. Because remember, Olbedi, we're talking about the private parts, the lovemaking, the sex. It has a lot to do with the energy of intimacy. So we want to be careful that we don't get mothers-in-laws or maybe father-in-laws, but typically they become the enemy. They become the one that makes things a little bit more rough and can cause many problems. So we want to be careful with that when we talk about Olbedi and the act of Ilenini. What else does Ilenini do? Okay, we talk about the Olbedi, we talk about the Ori. So Ilenini also likes to confuse people and likes to make believe that they are the guardian Orisha over the person's head and makes the person act in the manner that Ilenini wants them to act. Almost like throwing mud in Ori's face, like, ha, I got him. You're supposed to be dictating this human, but I got him now. So now this person is doing things he ain't supposed to be doing. Olbedi is the sign that I think about. When I think about people who are locked up, maybe in a mental institute, people that we think are crazy, but we know there's probably an egun or an obsessed spirit, but it can also be Ilenini, the negativity itself, that osolbo de egungun, that's affecting the person's head. Right? So we need to clear that all out. We got to do it both. And that same pataki that we talk about Ori talks about doing it both because he goes to Ifa. But in essence, in this sign, all right, the person needs to take care of their guardian Orisha, their Ori, their head. Understand that the things that they don't do that they're supposed to do amplifies negativity exponentially. Okay? We also want to understand that we want to attend Ogun Onochun as much as possible. We also understand that our enemies have to face the wrath of Chango through the Ebos of Chango. We also understand that in the special Ebo of 8 coconuts in Olbedi, go find a Bawalao, go do the Ebo. Okay? Or hit me up. Shoot me an email so we can chat it up, so we can figure out how that Ebo needs to work, so we can better turn things around in your life. So, with that said, I'm going to leave you with this. In this sign, I told you it speaks about a lot of divinities that are earthbound. But none more important than the old man himself, the man of the white cloth, Obatala. So when I talked about that one Ebo, I should have told you that's an Ebo to Obatala. Obatala is also the head. Obatala is the Orisha that guides. Obatala is a partner with Ori. Obatala, when I mention Ori, you should think of both of them. Okay? Ori being universal, or Obatala is terrestrial. So with that said, I hope I leave you with something to think about. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comments. And with that said, Iburu, Iboya, Ibucheche, Cyberland. Give me a like, give me a share. Boom. Give me a subscribe, especially a subscribe. All right? And remember, in Olbedi, we think of wisdom. Ori, Omatala, guardian Orisha, a lot of things with the head. So don't think with the wrong one. Take care of business, okay? Hit us up. la.regla.ifa@gmail.com. la.regla.ifa.com. Dots in between. Iburu, Iboya, Ibucheche, Cyberland.